Hey guys, welcome back. It's me, Gimpy. I'm here with something just a little bit different for you today, but before I get started on that, I just want to say that I haven't forgot about the Lock and Load Tactical playthrough that I've got going on. I know a few days are getting spaced in between when I'm getting those videos up. I am going to get them up as soon as I can. I've just been on a little bit of a GMT kick here recently because a lot of the games that I had on order from them showed up, like Duel Raid, Unconditional Surrender, this one. So don't worry, I am getting back to that soon. Anyway, the video at hand here is a little bit different. It's a playthrough, talk through, review type deal, all right? This is one I did unboxing on a few days ago. Blue Cross White Ensign. I mean, interesting name for it. It is the third in the line of the Flying Color series, of which I'm trying to get the first and second, and I have actually pre-ordered the fourth because I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far. But I wanted to do a video on it showing you some of the turns, kind of how it plays, some of the other things, how you mark the board, the informational counters, what choices you want to make on it, and how it solos. Because you guys know I primarily do my gaming solo with the exception of the stuff that my wife does with me, which is definitely not this. She is in no way, shape, or form interested in this stuff. So I wanted to do a video showing you guys how well this game solos, because I haven't seen too many out there showing the actual gameplay and progress. I saw there were a few showing Vassal in play, but I'm not very big into Vassal because if I want to play a video game, I play a video game. I want to play a board game. I want to get it to the table. There's just something about feeling the chits in my hand and actually doing it. And now I'm not saying that's bad for anyone else. If you like using Vassal, by all means, more power to you. That's great for you. And it's given a lot of people a chance to play some of the bigger table gobbling board games that they wouldn't otherwise get a chance to play for lack of space or resources or whatever it is. It's just not my cup of tea. But I wanted to kind of touch into the game, show you how I'm doing it, and let you see how well it solitaires. It is one of those where there's no AI specific in the game. And with these, I kind of try to just let the game play itself. I just make decisions for both sides. I know some people will like pick a side and then try to use the other side to beat it. Or me, I just try to let the game play itself, with me making the call. It's hard to describe and just kind of see who wins, Same thing, playing to the best of my ability. Couple things I want to point out before I kind of get started at it. There is a neat resource sheet you can get online. It's under the original Flying Colors. And if you look, you can take and print it out. It has a spot for you to put the name of the ship, whether it struck its colors, its rate. You can mark down the damage, the hull and rigging damage, personnel damage, all that type stuff on the sheet if you don't want to have a bunch of counters on your ships on the game board. I'm probably going to use this on my next playthrough. They do have a bunch of these sheets. If you have some of the other games, you can print them off and they already have the rates on a lot of them. The ship's names are already there. That way you could just print out the sheets that you need. You could even go as far as to print it out, laminate it, and use dry erase markers, kind of like what's that game, Talon? I've actually got that one coming in too. So you could have your own little sheet for Talon if you got them laminated. So this is a neat thing that they've got. Definitely check that out if you want to reduce your counter clutter. Now there is one other thing that I noticed, and for some reason I don't know if it's just missing from my game or whatever it is. There is no sequence of play written down on any of the player aids. And the sequence of play isn't massive on this, but I really couldn't find it anywhere. I'm sure someone's going to point it out in the comments like, no, dummy, it's here. But I went ahead and scanned it. If I'm right and it's just not here in it, you can scan the rule book and just print that out, and that'll work for you. Now, the one thing that I'm doing in my game that is absolutely rule breaking is that I've thrown out the out of command rule. Now, before you gasp in horror, let me kind of explain my reasoning on that, okay? For those of you who don't know, the way the game operates is a command structure that you can have your ships grouped into a formation, or they can operate based off of leaders that are controlling so many ships, and each of the leaders have a range. Like this leader's range is 5. Right, like you can see there, his range is 5. Other leaders have different ranges. It just depends, and they can control everything within so many hexes of their ship. So, for example, this guy, when he activated, his command could be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he could reach this front ship and 1, 2, 3, and the 2 behind him. So he could have command over these 3 ships with his range. Now, if I decided to have all these as a formation, they could all activate together and all move and fire and everything all as one. But the difference in the rules on that is that their formation, then they have to stay facing the same direction. And I don't like that. I'm not that good of a sailor. It's kind of hard for me to do that, to keep them going where I need them to go, facing the same direction. I want this thing to kind of come up here and snake around, and it just didn't seem to work for my purposes. And the other thing that I didn't like about it is that if you're out of command, like these 3 ships and everything down here would be out of command, you have to roll a die, and if it's equal to or less than your audacity number, which is told to you at the beginning of a scenario. For example, this group's audacity number is 0. You can subtract your admiral's leadership ability, which their admiral's is 1. So you can roll a 0 or a 1 to have full control over your ship. Otherwise, you can't shoot or move next to an enemy vessel. And you can't shoot at all, and you can't have your movement end next to an enemy vessel. I just didn't like that. It didn't seem applicable to me, because yes, there might be a fleet admiral giving orders to everyone with his flags and whatnot and his signal man, but each ship's still going to have an individual captain. They're still going to have someone calling the direct shots, and they're still going to order the cannons loaded and fired. So I changed it up the way that I'm playing it, that if I activate a group that's within command range, then that whole group can activate all at once. Otherwise, if they activate singly, I'm not worrying about rolling for out of command or anything like that. I'm just playing that single ship and going on and just going back and forth. It works for me. You don't have to play like that. It is not how it's in the rules, so that part is different. All right, the rest of it I'll try to maintain. I might make a goof here or there, but that part I am obviously doing different. You don't have to put down in the comments, that's wrong. I got it. I know it's wrong. But it works for me. And like I said, that's the good thing about a board game, is that you can change what works for you. And since I'm doing it that way, I grabbed out some of these little markers, because I'd forget with all these ships that are on the board which ones I've already activated and which ones I haven't. So if it's an individual ship or command, I just put a little marker on them to know that I've already activated one of those ships this round, and it works easy for me. But I wanted to kind of play through a couple of rounds now at this point and let you guys see kind of how it works, and see that it is very soloable. And if you're looking for something light in a Age of Sail era, this could work for you. It's not mind-burning. The rule book's not very long. It doesn't take you long to get it, to understand the basics. It took me a little bit to get the firepower determination chart down, because some pluses actually mean bad and some pluses actually mean good, because it's hard to explain, but the lower the number as far as a rate is concerned, the better it is. The more guns it has, the larger the ship it is. So adding a number, going up on the chart is actually a bad thing. It's reducing your firepower. It took me a little bit to get my mind around that. Like, okay, well, I'm plussing here, and that's really reducing it. And anyway, it's not that hard once you actually get into it. But let's take and get started. This is the Russians, which let's let you zoom in and see some of these ship counters here. What's going on? The Russians started up here. I've got another group over there. They have turned around. I had 3 commands set up with the Russians. One, they were all sailing the same direction, and I had one sail forward and turn around. I did not understand truly how hard it is to turn around in this game. It is mind-bogglingly hard. You can't just turn the ship. You can only swing the bow if you're, tacking into the wind, which is, facing into the wind. Otherwise, you're swinging the stern around like a truck driving a trailer, slinging the back end around. If you're anchored, not anchored, all that. It's definitely interesting. Let me grab up one of these ship counters so you guys can see it a little closer here. See what I'm talking about. This is one of the Swedish ships. That number in the top left is its rate, and the number in the top right is its hull points. It's basically its health. Once that number gets hit, you flip it over, you fill up the second number, it's destroyed, and then it's got victory points. Bottom left is its manpower, right? Melee, if you think about it that way. And then those numbers in the parentheses is its actual rate and how many guns this ship had in real life. Some of them are kind of estimated as, close to what they're being. The only number you need for, actual gameplay is that top left number. The others are just for historical reference. Now, these scenarios are based on real world examples, real world things that happened. And this one, a Russian fleet was anchored at the harbor. Those markers that you see on the far side of these Russian ships are little anchor markers. All right? So they are anchored, and the neat part about it is that you can decide, when you're putting them down, what side the ship's anchored on. Is it anchored at the front or the back, bow or stern, right? And you can rotate the ship as its movement in place. It hurts it as far as like firepower modifiers and things for that turn. But you can rotate it around, and it's going to rotate based on the hex that the anchor's at. So that's just a neat little thing. You can do all the stuff that you would expect in a game like this: raise sails, lower sails, anchors, sailing around. The one thing that throws me is that you can't directly turn into the wind, okay? You have to, what's called tacking into the wind, where you're swinging through it. So there's no way to sail in that direction. If the wind's blowing against you, you have to kind of sail sideways onto it, what's called beating. Actually, let me show you. There's a neat little chart in the back that shows it. This right here, this is saving my butt because I'm still having to look at it. Running is when the wind's blowing directly behind you. Reaching is your best. That's when it's blowing kind of up side of your butt. Beating is when it's kind of blowing across your face. And then taking it back, that's when you're sailing into it. That they call it in irons. I'm still learning all the naval lingo. Now, the real cool part about this and what simplifies it is there's no, this ship moves this fast, this ship moves this fast. They all have the same movement. This is your movement table, depending on whether you're running, reaching, beating, in irons, whatever the case may be. All right. And that's it. That's all you have to worry about. There are, special little modifiers for if you're rigging, which is your sails are damaged, if you're turning into a certain thing, which I still goof this one up because I'm having to look at that to make sure and everything. But don't worry if I goof a movement point here or there. It's just a game and I'm still getting my head around everything. But it's real neat how it's simplified that way. I like that so much better than trying to figure out, okay, well, this ship can move this fast and it's got 55.5 guns, so it can shoot with the firepower of, whatever. They very much simplified this, and that's why I think it's such an easier game to solo than some of the others that are harder. What's that one called? Close action. That one really gets into it. And from what I was reading on it, it's more of a naval simulation than a game, you know, when it comes down to it. We'll do our little firepower determination table here in a minute, and I'll show you guys how you get your numbers for that. All right, but anyway, the Swedish are sailing around. You can see my first ship in line here, because like I said, this game's already been going on a little bit, and the Swedes come in from this downward angle. There are some extra ones that have come on. There's actually still a bunch more off board, still waiting to come on, but they have to come in from this hex and continue on. Once their bow crosses a certain hex right down here, they can turn wherever they want to. I might have some of the ones behind come shooting up this way. My thought originally was the Swedes could take and swing up, come around, go across the line, and blast into the Russians. And while they might have a better firing position, the extra numbers and the fact that they were moving would bring them out and they couldn't finish them off. Well, the Russians get to focus firepower down on the Swedes, so they're just getting busted up. But I'm going to stick with the strategy for now just to see how it goes. Like I said, originally with this little group, I had them say they were going the same way, and I had them try to turn around, and that was one big hassle to get them finally turned around. So I'm going to have them be the moving factor of the Russians and try to get them to get down in here and hit the Swedes from the other side. There is another command far to the left, right over there. The last two ships are their own command as far as the Russians are concerned. And I think I'm going to have them break off from the end here in a little bit and kind of squish the Swedes in. We'll see how they do. The Russians are the only ones that have a couple of first-rate ships. They've got two that are first-rate, which are just massive firepower. That's why that front ship has so much damage on it. All right, but you're going to start with your wind adjustment segment, okay? Not on your first turn, just second turn and after. You're going to do your wind adjustment, and your wind adjustment is handled here, your wind adjustment table, and you just roll a die, no modifiers, and it does what it does. It said if you wanted to simulate a battle that was in the southern hemisphere, that you could take and just reverse which direction the wind was changing, since these are all northern hemisphere. So let's take, let's see, yep, that's in the camera so you guys can see that. Let's see if the wind is going to change on this turn. It is not. Zeros in this game are 0. So nothing to worry about there. The wind is coming across. You guys can see the marker right here at the edge, and it's blowing this way. It started that way. Now we take and roll for one thing we do is our command determination at this point, and your commands can change. All right, so who's in what command? They're not going to change too much for me. The Swedes, they have one commander on board right now. Well, there's a second one at the very bottom, but he's only got a little bit of range. So this guy is in range of this ship and the two behind him. So when he activates, he's going to activate that group of ships. Everything else is going to activate pretty much separately. There are 3 groups of Russian ships. The Russians decided to just stay as way anchor and see how things go for them. And so far it's been working. These little damage markers that are on the ship, you've got a couple types that show what type of damage. That's hull damage. And then there's also rigging damage. And this is the stuff I was talking about that you could take and keep track of off the board on that sheet of paper. That little -3, I like how they have these on the markers. That means that ship has -3 movement points this turn, okay? Or permanently, because it has so much sail damage to it. The Russian ships were focused firing their sails down, kind of hoping to knock the sails off this and turn it into kind of a blockade to force the Swedish to get their little line choked up, which so far it's worked, which we'll see how it works. I'm not an age of sail guy. I don't have a whole lot of experience. So I'm sure my strategies are shit. So you guys can tell me all about that in the comments. Now we do the command determination, which, like I said, they pick what each side picks which ships are in which command or out of command. After that, it's initiative determination. The command factor for the Swedes is a 1. It's same for the Russians. So each side rolls a dice. Red for Russians, blue for Swedes. And that's one thing. The game only came with 1 dice. I like GMT. I really do. I like their stuff. Generally, it's all good quality. It's all good instruction manuals. I mean, they put out good quality stuff. But I thought they cheaped out as far as this game was concerned, only putting 1 dice in the box. 2 minimum D10s were needed for this one, especially when you have to roll for determining initiative. The other thing I wanted to mention is there are rules for duels in this game, but it doesn't come with the duel map. That also was a error on their part. They are including the duel map in the 4th game in the series. It came out in the 2nd game in the series. But if you're going to have the rules in the game and all you need to do is include 1 paper map, I think they could have gone the extra step. I don't know how much they would have had to increase the price of the game. $2, $3 couldn't be much more than that for a paper map to go into it. They absolutely should have included the paper map. They dropped the ball on that one. But I am glad to see that they picked it up and are putting it into the 4th game. All right, enough of my ranting. Let's take and roll real quick and see what the initiative is. Okay, so the Swedes got it, so they're going to move first, or they're going to do something. They're going to activate a ship first. Now, in this game, the side that gets initiative can pick to go first or pass the initiative on to the other player. Since I am playing solo, I'm just playing it that whoever wins the initiative goes first instead of trying to figure out, well, is it more advantageous? No, just easier. Who wins the roll goes. Okay. So I have a group of ships that I can activate. I think I'm going to go ahead and activate that first battered to hell ship just so you guys can see how it would work. And there, I really don't think they're going to be able to do much. They have 2 movement points, okay? And they probably need to beat a hasty retreat because they are torn up. But it doesn't matter. I need to get him out of the line of fire. He has 2 movement points, right? Because he's sailing with the wind, or right, the wind's coming up his butt. That gives him 4. And then it's breezy, which adds +1 to all movement points in the game. That's listed down on your movement table. If the scenario is breezy, it's +1. If it's calm, it's -1. Now I want him to take and go forward, and what is that thing called? I can't remember the damn movement it's called. The thing where he swings, where he turns. I'm having a brain fart. I'll look it up here in just a sec. Yeah, it's called wearing. I couldn't remember it for the life of me. I had to stop the camera and look it up. Now, to wear your ship, which is where you turn, you have to at least expend 1 movement point before you can do it. So I either have to move forward or do what they call like braking, which is where you expend a movement point in place. If you do that, say he had extra movement points and he could go forward, you could break for 1, go 1, break for another, go 1, break for 1, go 1. As many movement points as you had, it's a way you can kind of slow your ship down. So that's interesting. But I don't need him to break. I need him to go forward and turn his butt so I can get him pointed away. I am going to have him fire onto the command ship to see if I can have him do some damage and maybe possibly wound. So he's going to go 1 forward and swing his butt. All right, that's all he's going to do. Now he is going to fire, and he's going to fire right here on this commander. All right, the lead ship of the Russians. But I am playing with the defensive rules, which means before this ship fires, this ship or any ship that has line of sight on this ship can take an attempt to take the shot on. So I'm wondering, do I take the shot? I'm probably going to take the shot with the command ship because I do have the potential to do a rake. And the reason I've got the potential to do a rake is if you draw an imaginary line straight from this ship, it passes through that one. That's your rake line, and you want to try to shoot the enemy ships in that line, either through their front or their stern, and it gives you a chance to do extra damage. If you shoot them in the butt, you can do up to 2 times the damage. If you shoot them in the front, you can do up to 50% more damage. But this command ship has so much firepower that it's definitely worth it for me. He's definitely within arc. He's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexes away. All right, first rate ship here. I'll show you guys which one this is. I'll bring it up to the camera. There aren't. That's part of the reason I want to get the flying colors, the first box, and possibly if I can find it, the expansion pack for the game, because that they have a lot more of the first rates, like the real big ships in it. This one had 108 guns on it. It was a first rate ship, so, and it's got 16 hull points on it. That's just massive. I really want that. All right, so let me put him back in place. I think that's part of the reason the Russians are just crushing these guys, because this one's a 4th rate ship, so it's not very large. All right, so he's taking his defensive fire first. I am, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexes away. Now, when you're drawing your line of fire, you draw from both the front and the rear hex to draw your line of fire, and you draw it to both hexes of the enemy ship, okay? And that's how you determine if your line of sight is obstructed or not. So you might only get a partial broadside through if you're partially obstructed, like just the front of your ship can see it or just the rear of your ship. There's a neat diagram in the rulebook that does show and explain that to you. Now, with him being a rate 1 at range 6, let's take a look at a little chart here. He's rate 1 or range 6. So his firepower, let me pull it up. His firepower is a 7 right now. Now, there are modifiers. None of these apply to it right now. He doesn't have any hull damage. It's not a partial broadside. That's what I was talking about. He didn't rotate. He is at anchor, but he's not rotating or anything. Tack is that turning into the wind. Not full sail, not demasted, not on fire. What is going to affect him is down here, you add the attacker's audacity. The Russian ships in this scenario have an audacity of 2. Like I said, the Swedish have an audacity of 0. So the Swedes have like twice as many ships, but they're really half as good. So it kind of is balancing out. So I add 2. These are going to change the rate, which would raise or lower you on your left hand side. These modify the actual firepower itself, okay, the number. So that 7 becomes a 9, and then you flick it open and you look, what are you shooting at? I'm shooting at a large vessel, and I come over here to the 9, and then I have to decide, do I want to shoot at the hull or do I want to shoot at the rigging? And then you roll a die, and this tells you, for example, if it just says R, that's 1 rigging point, hull is 1 hull point, and then it can go all the way up to 4 rigging, multiple hull. It can be both rigging and hull. If it has an asterisk, it has the chance to cause a fire on the ship. And how you would do that is if you roll a die and it's equal to or less than the amount of whatever it is, rigging or hull hits on the ship, that's it. The ship will catch fire. This one has a lot of rigging, so let me see if I can just take his rigging out. So he's 9, and I do have one other modifier that's going to affect me. +2 while firing anchored. Basically, I'm more stable at this point. So I can take and do a little more damage to him. So, let me make sure there's nothing else. If firing while anchored, yep. Alright, so that's going to be a +2 modifier on my 9 firepower. And we're going for the rigging. So let's see what we get here. 5, so that becomes a 7. So we're going to look at a little chart here under 9, and we're going to go down to the 7. The little white bar here. That is 4 rigging damage that's done. So no asterisks. If I had gotten one more, I could have caused a fire. I was hoping to, but that's alright. They only have 1 point of sail left, actually. So let's take and flip that over. And now they get to take their return shot. These are the little markers, like I said, you can use. I like how they have it on there. They have the information that you would need on there, like -1s and modifiers on it. But again, you can use the sheet if you want to. Now that this defensive fire is done, I get to return fire, but I have to remember to mark the ship with a little fired marker because he fired his starboard broadside. But in this scenario, the Russians have the advantage in that they can fire twice from the same side in the same turn. All right. They can't do it in the same impulse. So I can't like activate this group and fire twice with each ship, but I can fire that ship defensively and then fire it offensively when it's my turn. So really choose him up. But like I said, he's getting to fire back now. He has a rating of 4. He doesn't have a bunch of hull damage, just a bunch of rigging. He takes 1 more point. He's going to be demasted, which means he's just sitting there drifting in the wind, waiting to get chewed up. Range of 6, 4. So we go across 6. That's a firepower of 3, and unfortunately his audacity is 0, so he doesn't get to add anything to it. So we come over here to 3, and we see what we want to do to it. I guess hull, because the Russians aren't moving, so they really need to take and do whatever damage they can. So we're going to roll on this hull and see if we can do some damage. We need at least a 5 to get some hurt on him. Let's see. Got a 7. 7 on the firepower of 3 is rigging. It actually did rigging damage, which is possible. That does happen because you can have them on each side. So firing at the hull did a little rigging damage on the flagship of the Russians, but that is not a problem at all. Now we got to mark them with a fired, and these little markers you can take and flip over to say you fired both, so you don't have to have 2 markers on them. The Russian ships in this scenario can only fire twice. They can't take and fire twice out of each side. So if they fire twice out of the same side, that's it. The rest of the ships, the Swedish ships, can fire out of each side. So if there were Russian ships that were targets on each side, yes, they could fire at them. So let's take and put that down right there real quick. I paused it there to check a couple of things real quick. I was thinking that the Swedish ships would have a greater chance to hit since the Russian ships are anchored, but there actually isn't a rule for that. It's just the Russians get a modifier for sitting still. You would almost think it'd be the other way around. Now there was one thing that I glanced over because I was a little wrong on that. I thought that firing, like the wind does have modifiers that affect your shooting, but I thought that only mattered if, for example, you're firing directly with the wind or directly against the wind, but it does count when you're beating or reaching, which is, angled into the wind. So I'll start adding those things into it as well. But you guys can see I put my little marker on my ship. Like I said previously, I am playing a little bit different as far as the out of command thing works. It's just easier for me and the way I like it for playing solitaire. Like I said, if you want to play it, extremely by the book, it's your game, by all means, and do it. I'm going to take and activate, let me move this group here. I'm going to take and activate that group up there to take and move them. So let's see. This commander has a range of 4, unfortunately. So 1, 2, 3, 4. He only has range onto the ship next to him, which is a small one, a little frigate, and then that third rate up there. But this one doesn't have. He's out of command, so I'm gonna have to take and activate him separately. But I will activate this commander because I want to take and turn these guys. You know what? I'm going to have to activate this one first because I don't want to waste that one there behind him. Right there. I would have to take and break and then turn and waste a movement point. And I don't want to do that. I want to get him closer down because I want to get them coming this way. They'd be reaching into the wind and I could slam them alongside. But, unfortunately, I would be passing my own firing line. I'm going to have to take and turn them even more. The wind changed around because, like I said, the wind started off pointing that way, and now it's pointing that way. And I slung these ships around. They swung all the way around, and now they're coming back. And by the time they're in range to fire, I bet you the wind's going to have turned all the way back around and be in their face, and they're not going to be able to move. But, all right. I'm going to take and activate this front ship first and see what I can do with him. Alright, so he's directly with the wind, which gives him 4, and then the fact that it's breezy means he's got 5 points. Alright, and he is going to be turning from, well, he's not going to be turning from any of those, so the turn is not going to, it's double at full sail, and I am at full sail. That's right, I forgot those guys are at full sail and they're going to be dropping full sail at the end of this turn. So his movement is actually different. So he's at 6, he's got 7 movement points, but he's going to have to, it's going to cost him more. But thankfully it's only going to cost him none. So double at full sail of none is 0. So that's not going to matter because he's turning from running into reaching, which doesn't cost any extra movement points. So that's a good thing. Alright, so if we take and do it this way, if I bring him forward 1, turn him, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That gets him too close. I don't want to do him that way. I need to get him turned the other way. I want to kind of box him in. So if I go 1, turn him 2, 3, turn again 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that'll work. Alright, let me have that marked. This guy is going to go there. And he is going to be dropping full sails, but he doesn't get to drop them until... he gets to drop them when he's done moving. At the beginning or end of your move, you can drop... Or not the beginning, at the end of your move, you can raise or lower full sails. So he is dropping full sails, but... he does have a line of fire on this ship here. Right here's his firing line. And it is right there on a front rake. So I can do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can do a front rake right on this guy. Now, from the way I understand it, the rules would state if any of these ships had front swivels and could fire out of their fronts. The scenario didn't say anything about swivels, so from my understanding, they can only fire from the sides as broadsides. So that's what I'm going with on this one. None of the ships, Russians or Swedes, can fire out of the front of the butt. But, like I said, you can see, let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little more what I'm talking about there. To understand about the rake, you look at the line drawn straight from the ship, and if that line crosses the ship that's firing, then that ship can perform a rake against them. So I can perform a bow rake against this ship, and that's what I'm going to do. And I don't have to worry about return fire because he doesn't have line of sight, and this little guy doesn't have line of sight because his line of sight runs right along here. So I'm going to take my fired starboard, put it right there. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexes away. 6 hexes at, he's a third rate. Let's see. Now I have to roll to take and potentially get the rake table. Alright, so I need to get a 4 or less on the rake table. I get to subtract my audacity. It's not a stern rake, it's a bow rake. I don't have a commander on board that ship, so I don't get to subtract that, but I have to add the range to target. The range to target is 6, and I get to subtract 2, so I got to add 4 to whatever I roll. So the only way I can successfully do this is if I roll a 0. I mean, it's not impossible. Let's see if it happens, and then I'll get my rake, which would add 50% to the damage that was done. Nope, got a 3, so no good. So we're just going to do our regular fire against him. He's a 3rd rate, which is pretty good, firing at range 6, which gives him a firepower of 4. Add the 2 audacity modifier. So, and you can see point blank right there, and they have the carronade bonus, which I didn't know previously, but carronades are big bore cannons that are used at close range to blow big holes and things. So that's really cool. So I end up with a firepower of 6. Alright. 6 against a large ship is right here. And what do I want to go after? I can go after his rigging, or I can go after his hull. You know what? He doesn't have a whole lot of hull, and I get a +2. Well, no, I don't get the +2 modifier. That one is not anchored. We'll take the chance. As long as I don't roll a 0, 1, or 2, I can do some hull damage to him. So we'll do that. Let's see what we get here. And it is a 6. All right, 6 is pretty good. Let's take and roll across here. You gotta be kidding me, it's rigging. And if I had picked rigging, I would have caused a fire as well. All right, just a little rigging damage, or I would have had a chance to cause a fire. So we'll take and throw this down on him. But another couple of rigging hits will slow him down, so it's not too bad. Let's see what we're gonna do now. That's him activated. Now it's the Swedes that are activating. I can take and activate that ship, who is beating into the wind. So he's only going to have a movement. This one is only going to have a movement of 3. So if I went 1 and then turn, hell, I can't. That's tacking. That's into the wind. I can't turn him into the wind. Screw it. I'll just send him screaming forward and see what happens, because they've got to start getting in close and take advantage of the numbers. You've got to take and roll if you want to turn your ship against the wind, and it's here on how many movement points it's going to cost you, and you effectively swing your bow through it, okay? Through the wind itself. So if I wanted to turn him, I would turn him down through the wind, and he would end up facing that way. And then that tells you how many movement points. Like I said, I'm still learning the sea sailing movement thingy, but I'll take and sail him forward, and he can fire on this guy. So he's got 3 movement points. 1, 2, 3. We'll move him up to there. And I can fire onto this one because he's within his arc, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I wasn't even paying attention. This one still has defensive fire because he can fire twice. He activated and he fired his right side, but the Russians get to fire the same side twice each turn, as long as it's offensive and defensive, not just like during one activation. So let's flip this over to the double side. Flick this one over to his port here. So I remember that. I'll put a little marker to know that I've activated. So the way the defensive fire works is it's not the ship that is being shot at. It's any ship with a line of sight on the attacking ship that can make a shot can do the defensive fire move on him. So they're better off with this one because he's at a range of 3 and he has another chance to do a rake against this guy, and that's done before his shot's going over there. Alright, so let's see how the rake goes here. Now he's gonna subtract 2 and the range is 3, so it's subtracting 1 from it now or it's just adding 1. So I have a much better chance of getting a rake on this one. A 3 or under will take and get me a rake. Nope, 5. No rake. So again, his firepower is a third rate, and now we're coming across over into close range because he's at range 3, and that little, let me hold it up there. That shaded spot tells you if the ship has a circle around its firing, which actually this one does. It's got a black circle. If the value in black background, if the base firepower is shaded, if it's black, which that one is, you lose 1 rate. So that's unfortunate when it comes to that. So he's not going to be firing at a 8, he's going to be firing at a 6 because he loses that black circle around it. Represents a third rate that's kind of undergunned for itself. But I do get a +2 bonus for its audacity, so the firepower is 8. That's unfortunate. It could have been 10. Alright, so firepower of 8, and yeah, we'll go for hull damage, see what we can do on it. Let's roll this real quick. Oh, I gotta check for the wind because he is that's beating. He's beating in the wind. So I can't be the only guy out there that just thought that didn't sound right. Okay. He is firing with the wind. Alright. Oh, if firing with the wind, he gets a -1. Alright. So that's unfortunate. So he's getting a -1 and +2, so he's just getting a +1 on his firepower of 8, and we're going against the hull. So he ends up getting a 6 total. And we'll take and scroll across here. So that's 2 hull damage that was done to him. That's not too bad. I'll take 2 hull damage. Take and throw that on him. And he's marked. A few more hull points and that guy will be nice and messed up. Now you get to take your original shot. Now you can see why I'm saying mark the ships when you're playing the game to kind of keep track of where you're at. Yes, I get that if I were playing formations with it, you know, have everything as a formation or have just a couple of big formations, then it would be easier to keep track of what's activated and what's not. But I like the idea of, you know, a single ship swinging around and making a suicide charge and stuff like that. And I think it's harder to do with the formations. I mean, you know, others can. Maybe you guys are smarter than me. Whatever. But like I said, this is what works for me. But marking them this way ensures that I know, okay, these guys have already gone. They've been activated this round, or this command has been activated this round. Okay, so this one is taking his shot here. This is what he moved up for and got his defensive fire there. And it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces away. And he is, I think it's a 4th rate. Yeah, he's a 4th rate at range 6. Need to get closer to do some damage to these guys. So he's got a firepower of 3. He is firing with the wind. Alright. With the wind is going to give him a -1. So that's unfortunate on his firepower. So he's way back here on 3. And they need to go for hull because the Russians are pretty much sitting there just blasting them apart. So they're not going to, rigging's not going to do as much for them. All right, we'll go for hull. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to bump that. And see what we get. We're getting a -1 here. Oh, 5. 4 is nothing on it. Yep. If I had chose rigging, I would have done 1 bit of damage to him, because there's the 4. That's where I ended up getting. That's unfortunate. All right, where am I at in the video time? I've gone pretty long. I know I'm probably approaching an hour here at this point. So I'll take and go ahead and stop it here so you guys don't drone on. But if you guys like it and you want more of it, I'll do more of a playthrough of it. But that's the general gist of how the game is played. There are a lot more specifics into it. There is sailing next to someone and grappling them. Where's the little grappling table? Is that on the other one? That's grounding. It must be on the back of the rule book, maybe? Yeah, here we go. You can see there's rules for grappling, disengaging from being grappled. If your ship has so much damage, you have to start rolling. The crew that's left on the ship might start taking, or they might throw the colors and they surrender. At that point, the ship's pretty much done out of the fight. There are rules for if the commander gets wounded and then possibly gets killed on the ship. There's just a lot of little neat rules. There's where's this? I like this where it comes to fire. If you get one of those hits that causes an asterisk, then it can possibly cause a fire, and then that fire, can possibly start causing more and more damage. If it rolls right, it's going to just keep cooking the ship. And then there's actually rules for if it's grappled or fouled with another ship, that the fire might spread to that ship. So it's got a lot of just neat little things that go on with it, but it is not overly complex that you can't get your head around the game. A lot of games, when you first get it, it's going to take you 2-3 days of pouring over the rules to get it. Or if it's a World at War, it's going to take you a year. This one, you can sit down and within an hour you can be playing a basic scenario and getting your head around the game. Not including pulling all the counters out and crap like that. In my opinion, it does play well solo. It only plays well solo if you're one of those guys that can take and play both sides to the best of your ability. All right. If you can't do that, there is no solo AI. Not that I know of. Maybe someone's put one up on BGG. I do know there are a set of initiative deck of cards, but they also came with the second game in the series. They are also being released again with the 4th game. So the Duel and the initiative cards are being released with the 4th game. I'm not sure exactly how the initiative cards work. They might only be used with duels, or they might be useful in fleet actions as well. I'm not entirely sure until I get my hands on those. But I want to say, if you can do that, if you can play both sides, and you're looking for something in Age of Sail that, wet your whistle, but you don't want to take and have to have a buttload of record keeping, and what guy had scurvy and what guy has dysentery on the ship and how much rum is left and all the crap you got to keep track of. This is up your alley. You can take and throw out a map. You can pull out the ships. I love the fact that they're named. That way it's individual ships. I wish it was names I could pronounce instead of the Flag de Fuera. That these are all named, but it's still interesting to have historically named ships battling each other in scenarios that they were actually involved in. And I can see with the way I'm playing why the Swedes lost this fight. Historically, they lost this fight, but the Russians actually did sail out. They didn't stay at anchor like I've been doing. But, that's neither here nor there. I will say, definitely check it out if you're interested. I'll put a link in the description for the P500 for it's not Serpents. Forgive me, I have a brain fart in here and I can't remember what their 4th one is called. I was wrong previously. It's not Napoleonic. It's set in South America, so you've got a lot of the South American countries involved with it, Peru and Venezuela and things like that, during the Age of Sail. If you're interested, it does come with the dual map. It comes with the initiative cards. I think it only comes with 1 or 2 maps, like maps. So you would realistically need to have one of the previous games to get some serious maps onto the board. Anyway, you guys let me know if you want to see more in-depth playthrough of the game. I'll set up to do that. It's just going to take me a little while because you guys can see the game does eat up a little bit of time, but it's not like I don't enjoy it, so it's not going to hurt my feelings. You guys take care. I'll see you in the next one.